Hi, I'm Kath.
And I'm Dave.
And today we're going to talk about HTML5 and how we can build amazing web experiences and applications on the internet.
So what is HTML? HTML is really the building blocks of all sites on the internet.
So think about a billboard, okay? If you've got the front of the billboard, you're seeing pictures and text, and when you go to the side, you see struts and all the metal that supports it. So HTML is actually those struts and the metal support of all pages on the internet.
So what actually happens is HTML is comprised of tags that open and close that declare the actual structure of the site, where images go, and so forth.
Now within those tags, we can also have attributes and properties. And attributes and properties basically put the tags on a little bit of steroids to get a bit of more oomph out of them.
So let's look at the scenario of video. At this point in time, we need to use plugins to be able to put video onto the web, such as Microsoft Silverlight or Adobe Flash. Now, with HTML5, all we need to do is use a tag. No plugins required.
So now that we understand what we're going to be doing, let's go and actually build something.
So let's go and have a look at how we're going to build this.
So what we've got here is a page that we created earlier, just so that you can understand the different steps that we're going to be going through today and what each of them do. So small little detail, I know, but this is in fact a drop shadow that's been created by Style Sheets. The key thing though is look at this beautiful interaction that we get with our mouse and the JavaScript that we've added. This text up here is specifically not a system font, it's also not an image. This is one of the fonts that we've added with Style Sheets. And let's have a look down here at the video that we've embedded. You can see as our mouse over the controls come up, it's definitely not being played by a plugin, so let's have a look at that. And you can see that that's actually really some great interaction that I've got. And all of this is created with HTML and none of the other elements, no plugins whatsoever. So now let's go and create this page.
So let's get coding.
And we're going to start with a really basic HTML page so you can orientate yourselves. Okay, so let's go and actually create this page. So what I've got here is I've opened up Microsoft Expression Web 4, and this is the program that we use for web for HTML development. Now what I've got here is a basic HTML page. You can see that this is declared, up here is my document type declaration. That simple line will tell the browser that this is specifically an HTML5 page. Then I've got my opening HTML tag and my closing HTML tags. And everything else happens within those tags. We never code outside of that spaces. With this, I've got two areas. I've got my head and I've got my body. And the difference between the head and the body is the stuff that we put into the head we're not necessarily going to see on the page, but we will see the effects of. So when we start working with JavaScript in a moment, we're going to add the JavaScript into the head of the page, not into the body. In the body, we add things that are actually going to have an effect. So we could start here and we could say, hello world, and let's save that. So I can save it, or otherwise I can do Control S on my computer. And now let's go and just preview what that looks like in a browser. And here I've got this, and you can see that that says hello world, but not particularly exciting. So now let's add a bit more. Let's change the title of this page. We're going to call it Kath's HTML5 page. And we said that we actually wanted to add the video. So I've added the paragraph tags, the P tags, and with regards to the video tag, where we open a video tag, we're going to close it. We're not going to add anything in here, but now I need to work with the properties and attributes that I spoke of earlier. Now the thing that's coming up here is, this is IntelliSense. And IntelliSense is a great thing that you get when you use programs that are specifically designed for web development, because it shows you what code you're going to need. Now the source of this video, I need to point it to it, is I've got a media folder here, and you can see that I've got a wildlife.mp4, and that is the video that I want to call. So I need to ensure that I'm referencing the folder, and then I need to type the name of the file exactly as I have it in there. The other thing that I want is, now that I've got my video in there, I also want controls. And let's select those controls so that we've got those. Enter those. Let's save that again. And let's run that in the browser to see what that looks like. So we're going to allow blocked content. And let's play that. And there we added video. So that's actually been quite simple so far, and it's quite effective, and we've been able to, with a few little lines of code, not even that much, we've been able to add video. But now we want to be able to add the canvas interaction, because we had that beautiful JavaScript that we had in that place as well. So the same way that we started off with a video tag, we're now going to start with a canvas tag. And where we open the canvas tag, we must close it. Now canvas doesn't get a source, but because it references a whole lot of things, I need to give the canvas an identity, an ID. So I'm going to call this my canvas. I could call it Bob or Fred if I wanted to as well. I also need to give it a width. I'm going to give it a specific width of 480. You'll see later on why. And I also need to give it a height, and I'm going to add a height of 400. So let's save that and run that on our page and see what that looks like. So my video's moved down, and that's because I've added the canvas elements here. If we go and view the source, you can see that there is my code for my canvas, but it doesn't do anything at the moment. All I've done is I've just referenced, I've said where it needs to put that content. So now let's actually go and add the interactivity that allows us to create that beautiful interaction. So this is the tricky part. What I've got here is on this canvas.js page, I've got all the script that created that interactivity. So I'm going to go and copy all of that script and paste it into our HTML page. Now before I do that, I also need to just sort of say what I'm going to be adding here so that the browser knows what it's doing. So you'll notice that I open and close the script tag, but this time I'm actually going to paste my content in between the script tags. Okay. And I'm almost there. The last thing I need to do is I need to ensure that what I've done here in the head gets called into the body. And for that, I need to tell my body that when it loads, it needs to call a specific function. And I'll run through the function that we created earlier in a moment, but this is just for reference. So notice here that I've got a function called init. Now, of course, that function could also be called whatever I wanted to. And JavaScript is made out of functions and variables. So what I've got here is, you can see I've got a function that says init. So all of this starts with the init, and I need to make sure that the body knows that that happens. So let's save that, and let's go and refresh our page, and you can see what we've got here. And now that we've done that, here we've got this gorgeous interaction. But this one isn't quite the one that we saw on that other page that we created earlier. In fact, we were able to do a couple of modifications. So let's run through this code just so you get a vague idea of what it means. I don't need you to code it all just yet, but you should have an understanding more or less of what we're doing. So with regards to this, we've got variables and we've got functions. So this variable calls context. That's an abbreviation for context. It says that it's null. You can see that we're calling the canvas. We get the element by ID, and there we can see the word my canvas. So there's always a circular reference from the body through to the head of what we're going to be talking about. We saw that there was a loop. There's an interval of 16. We can come and adjust that later if we want to change it. Here's a couple of math elements. This is a bit higher grade and hardcore. But one of the things you should notice is the R, the G, and the B. When we work with color on the web, we work with RGB colors, or sometimes hexadecimal. And RGB colors basically are depicted by numbers. So when we see RGB and numbers, we know that we're actually working with color in that area. In this next little section, you can see that we're working with the mouse movement. We're working with X and Y coordinates, and that's because the screen is actually a huge table of X and Y coordinates. So we start off in the top left. And then here we've got the line width. We can change that. We can make that nice and big. Change that to 80. And we can also take the round and we can make that to square to give it a slightly different shape. Here we can see an RGB again, but we've now got an A attached to it, which means it's alpha, and alpha gives us our transparency. That's also a great new feature in HTML5, the fact that we can bring transparency into color. And then we're going to be repeating some color and a bit more math. So if we save that, and we pop back through to our page, and let's refresh that by hitting F5, then you can see suddenly I've got those big blocks of color because we changed those variables within our JavaScript function. And that's of the first part of what we've got here. Okay, so now that we've created that, now we want to go and add our formatting and start playing with style sheets. So let's go back to Expression Web. Let's click through to that. And now we're going to start adding those elements. So I need to add a little bit more of formatting before we do that. So let's just add the right spacing on the page. I'm now going to add a div tag. Div tags are things that came in with Cascading Style Sheets 2, and they are great for helping us format. We don't use tables anymore, but we use div tags to do a lot of our spacing and formatting. I need to give this one an ID because I'm going to be referencing some style that I'm going to be using in a moment. So let's save that. Now, the same way that I had my scripts on my .js file, we can keep all our styles on a .css file, and we can reference it separately, but I'm going to be pasting this into our page so that we can actually just work with one. Now, the same way that I created script tags in order for our browser to know that I was trying to put scripts in there, I now need to put the same for style, and I need to be able to reference my style.txt CSS. So let's close that tag, and I'm now going to paste my content in between these two tags, and now the browser knows to render anything between those two as specifically styled. So let's quickly run through what we've got here. You'll notice that I've got a body tag, and the body tag means that when I've got a body tag in my style sheet, that all the formatting I've got here in between my little azimuth brackets is basically going to affect the body. So in terms of a margin and padding is going to be 0. The background is a specific color. This is a shortened form for the hexadecimal value of black. I've also got a URL, which means that I've put an image in there and it's also saved into my media folder, and I've given it a positioning. I've told that it needs to be fixed, mustn't move, and I've added a font family of this is the kind of font that I want to see. This is still a system font. I've given it a font size, and I've given the font a specific color, the shortened form of gray. Then I've got things called H1, H2, and H3 tags, and those are basically tags which give importance. They're like headings. H stands for heading 1, heading 2, heading 3. I've got similar there. My custom font is not something we have in at the moment, so that's not going to render, but we've got Georgia. Again, we've got colors, and then we've got the special one with the hashtag box, and that's going to be adding the formatting to my div. So let's save that, and let's go back to our web page and refresh that. And suddenly you can see that I've got a whole lot of formatting that I didn't have before. I've got a lovely background picture, which if I scroll down is not going to move. I've got a white box for my page, and my other elements are still within that. So let's go and just work a little bit more tweaking. What I do want to do is within the div, I want to add my H1, my heading 1, and I want to say that this is my HTML5 page, and I think I had a woohoo there as well. And underneath my video, I just wanted to add a little line to say that these are my holiday videos. So now that I've got that, let's start playing with some real style sheets with some CSS3 elements. So I'm going to uncomment this little one here. Now, box shadow is a new element, and that's very specifically a CSS3 element. So that's going to give that drop shadow to my white box that we saw in the final picture. And the other element that I want to do is I'm going to go through to styles. I just need to copy this. The @font face is also a new tag that we've got in CSS3. And let's just drop that in just above the body. So when we paste that in, @font face is new. You can see that I'm calling a custom family my custom font. I can change the name of that. I've got a very specific file that I'm referencing, the URL yet again, and I've got those files over here. In fact, I've got two different fonts in here. I've got the A8 and the Boston font. Now, the one thing about CSS3 is that you'll know that browsers render it differently. So Internet Explorer needs a different file, it needs a .eot file, whereas Mozilla and Chrome and a couple of others use the .ttf file. So I've got both of those in there. So now let's save that, go through, refresh our page, and suddenly you see that I've got a page that looks exactly the same as the one I created earlier. And there, within a couple of minutes, and with a couple of elements, you've been able to create an HTML5 page.
So we have a really nice page with some great interaction on it.
And even though it's quite a bit more basic than the examples we showed you earlier, it gives you a great grounding and understanding of what HTML and HTML5 actually is. So let's go through and have a look at the resources so that you too can start building experiences like this.
So HTML5 can do some amazing stuff.
So let's have a look at what we learned today. We looked at the basic structure. We then added some of the native HTML5 tags. We also added JavaScript for interactivity, and then we did some formatting with CSS3.
If you want to build cool experiences like these, you can use Notepad or you can use Expression Web, which you can get from expression.microsoft.com.
Similarly, you also want to learn about HTML, style sheets, and JavaScript, and you can do that at www.w3schools.com for free online tutorials. And of course, last but not least, you might want to do a little bit of image manipulation at the same time. There's a great free little app at getpaint.net.